Today's daf is daf Samach Aleph, and we're going to begin at the bottom of Samach Omid Beis. And the Mishnah had said, Simonia of lo nemru. The Torah doesn't tell us what are the simonim of an oaf kosher. So the Gemara says, Velo, is that really so? V'asanya, we learned in a brayso, nesher. Amongst the non-kosher birds, of which there are 24 listed in the Torah, we have the nesher. And if we look at the nesher, then we're going to determine what are the simoni kashrus. Why? Because nesher is very profound and different in the sense that it's missing all four simoni kashrus. Ma nesher miyuchad she'en lo etzba yiseir. He doesn't have that extra toe. The zefek, he doesn't have a crop. The ein korkavono niklaf. You can't peel off the skin on top of the kurkavan, the gizzard, and furthermore, doresh v'yochel. It's a dores tame. Af kol kayotze tame. Now, this is very complicated because although it's true that nesher is lacking all four simoni kashrus, and therefore it's called an of tame, and the Torah specifies that. But what are we going to derive from that? Are we going to derive from that if another species of birds would have, let's say, one simon or two simonim, then they would be kosher because it's only tame because it's missing all four? But it's more complicated than that because the Torah tells us that you bring a tar on the mizbeach. Now, again, the Torah allows for Torim and Bnei Yonah in many places in Sefer Vayikra. We're not sure exactly what the tar is. It's loosely translated as a turtle dove, but we're going to see later on, not on this daf, but tomorrow's daf, that it's very difficult to assume that a tar is a turtle dove. But whatever it is, the tar is kosher mizbeach, and you can only have something that's kosher li adam, that would be kosher limizbeach. If it's tmeya, then you can't bring it on the mizbeach. Now let's take a look at Torin. And Torin have the following: Yeshlam etzba yisera, vizefek, kurkavan niklaf, v'ein darsim v'ochel. So therefore, if we take the tar as the only case where the Torah explicitly says that it's an oftar, and we look at the simonim and the qualities of the tar, we'll come up with four qualities, all of which were here. Afkol kayotz men tahurin. So then we come to the conclusion that only a species that has all four simoni kashrus, dumya detorin, would be a kosher fowl. And how could that be? Because we just finished saying that an of tame is lacking in four of the simonim. So we have to reconcile all this, but the contradiction to our Mishnah says that there were no simonim available in the Torah, but that's not really so because we derive the simonim from the Torah. Meaning the Torah itself doesn't spell out explicitly what are the simone of Torah. But midivrei sofrim, they're going to look at the Chacham, are going to look and analyze the tar, and they're going to come to the conclusion that these are the four elements in a tar that are qualifications of the tar, and they're going to set up and propose these simonim for a kosher bird. But that's midivrei sofrim. Interesting is the Kesef Mishnah at the beginning of Hilchas Ishus has a discussion about the phrase midivrei sofrim, and he points out in the Rambam, but in general, that divrei sofrim doesn't necessarily mean it's the Rabbanon. It means it's not explicit in the Torah. So we needed the Rabbanon to explicate what it is in the Torah, but that has a power of a doraisa. Tani Reb Chia, we have a brisa that was taught by Reb Chia. Of haba b'simon echad tar l'fi she'eina domel l'nesher. In other words, we're going to use nesher as the paradigm of an of tameh, and anything that's not up to par and equal to the nesher, meaning it doesn't have all four simoni tuma, then it's tar, which is going to lead us to a problem with regard to tar, because we learned from tar that there are four simoni tar, but now we're saying that all you need is one siman, ofa baba siman echad tar, lefisha ena domel nesher. Nesher lesle klal. The reason why the Torah prohibits nesher is because it's missing all four simonim. But ha'ika, but if you have an oath that has one of the four simonim, then it's not dumya de nesher. And if it's not dumya de nesher, then it should be an oath tar. Ha'ika de islechad teichel. If you have one simon kashrus, you should be allowed to eat it. Now that's going to be a problem, because in truth, the 24 categories of oath tummy that is spelled out explicitly in the Torah are species of birds that have simoni tara. So we should come to the opposite conclusion, that you don't need dafka to have a deficiency, a lack, and a chisaron in all four simonim in order to be tameh. And now we're saying if there's one simon tara, then it's tar. So Gemara says, "V'leilch mi torin, ma torin deika kulu arba, af hochanami ad deika kulu arba." So if you're telling me that your paradigmic case of an oaf tameh is nesher, which is lacking in all four simanim, and therefore I jump over to tar, where the Torah says explicitly that it's tahar. In the case of a tar, tar is tar, but tar is with a tough and tahar is with a tes. Anyway, but from the Torah, I should learn that, we have to live up, in order to be an oftar, you have to live up to the standards that are set by Tar. And that's all four simonim. So we're sort of like in the bind over here, because from Nesher, we're going to seem to derive that it's only tummy if you're lacking in all four. Dumya the Nesher. If, on the other hand, we operate with Tar, it's only Tar if you have all four. So the Gemara answers him, Cain, Sha'ar ofos tmeim de koser rachmana lomali. Why did the Torah have to specify all the non-kosher birds, 24 species of non-kosher birds? If you're telling me that we're going to derive from Tar that it's only going to be a permissible oath if it has all four simonim like the Tar, then by definition, all the 24 species that are spelled out by the Torah are all miyutar. It's all superfluous and unnecessary, because none of them have all four simoni tara. So from the fact that the Torah went ahead and listed and specified all these 24 cases of of tameh, we have to derive the conclusion that even if a bird doesn't have a deficiency, a chisara, in all four, like nesher, nevertheless, it might be tameh. So what's the bottom line here? It would seem that from the fact that the Torah went ahead and specified these specific 24 species, it means everything else is tahar, even if it's similar to the 24 species, meaning it doesn't have all four simonim, but let it have one of the four simonim. And then we're putting tar on the side. We're going to have to come back when the Gemara finally concludes its logic and explain why the Torah says that tar is tahar, implying that you need all four simonim, when we're going to derive from the superfluous list of the ofos tmeim that all you need is one of the simonim of Tara. So Gemara says, "V'nelech minei." Why are you telling me that from the list of ofos tmeim, I'm going to derive that other ofos that only have one, two, or three of the simonim are tar? On the contrary, why not derive from the specification of all these birds that are tameh that anything else that's dumya, that's similar to those 24 species, in the fact that they don't have all four simoni tara are tame. Ma hasam tlosa v'lo achola. Just like amongst the list of the 24 species of birds, there are those who have 3 out of the 4 simoni tara, and yet the Torah says that you're not allowed to eat them, is af kol tlosa lo nechal. Why don't we use the 24 cases as a paradigm, as a binyan av, to derive from that any bird, any species of bird that has 3 out of the 4 simonim should be aser. And then kolshkein trei v'chad, and then we're going to say that if it only has 2 of the 4 simonim, and how much more so if it only has 1 simon, then it's tameh. And in that sense, when we use the list of the 24 non-kosher species of ophos that are explicit in the Torah to derive conclusions, we really swing around and derive the same conclusion that we wanted to derive from tar, that you can only have a species of a kosher bird if it has all 4 simonim. But in Cain, now we get stuck with the orev. The orev, the koser rachmana lamali. Amongst the list of the 24 categories of species of non-kosher ophos is the orev. Now, the orev, in fact, has 2 of the 4 simone tuma, or I should say the other way around, 2 of the 4 simone tara. Now, we just came to the conclusion that even if you have 3 out of the 4, which means that it's similar to some that are on the list of the Tmeim, it's Tameh, and for sure it's not similar to Torah, which is Tahar, then why did the Torah bother with Orev? Orev is one step closer to being Tahar than a species that only has 1 Simon Taro, because Orev has 2 Simon in Taro.
Who did I bother? Who did you have on the...
So again, let's go over the logic now of the Gemara. The Gemara is saying that the Torah listed the Orev now as a behemoth, as an oftami. Why did the Torah have to bother doing that? If we're deriving from the list of all the ophosfeim that we need 4 simoni tara, and in the case of Orev, you only have 2 out of the 4, why did the Torah bother? It's totally superfluous. We know that it's tummy because it doesn't have all 4 simoni tara. And therefore, the Gemara's logic now is compelling the Gemara to come to the opposite conclusion from the fact that the Torah had to go out of its way to establish that Orev is Tameh, even though it only has 2 out of the 4, then we should derive from this that any new species above the 24 should be considered kosher if it has 3 signs of Tara. If they have 3 simonim out of 4, then it's got 1 up it on Orev, and therefore it's similar enough to Tar to be classified as an Oaf Tar. So now we're coming to the conclusion that from Orev we want to derive the opposite of what we said before. Before we wanted to derive from Nesher, etc., and the whole list, that in order to be an Oaf Tar, it's got to have all 4 simoni kashrus. Now we're saying the opposite. Let's derive from Orev that Orev is Tommy because it only has 2 out of the 4, but if we had 3 out of the 4, then it would certainly be an Oaf Tar. And now just to finish the daf, the Amud, I should say, let's look at the first line on Samach Aleph Amud Beis, and the Gemara says, "V'leilach me orev, ma hasam trei lo, af kol trei lo." Or the Gemara says we can go the other way around. We can set up orev as a paradigm, and then we're going to derive from orev that any bird that has only 2 out of the 4 simonim is treif, is tameh. Ma hasam trei lo, af kol trei lo. That in the case of Orev, the Torah went out of its way to point out that it only has 2 simonim, and therefore it's Taleh, implying that any other species of bird that only has 2 simonim out of the 4 is Tameh. And we're using it as a comparison.